She wasn't looking for a knight, she was looking for a sword. This was one of my favorite quote poems when I was 14. At that time, the Me Too movement hadn't happened yet, but thanks to social media, feminism was becoming increasingly popular and more widely discussed. What appealed to me about this quote was that it broke the pattern. In one short sentence, there was a hint at rethinking one of the oldest female archetypes in culture and media, the princess. The idea that maybe this delicate, luminous figure who so often played the damsel in distress could actually be something deeper, something stronger, sharper. She could be the one who decides her own fate and slays the dragon. And that's exactly what are we going to talk about today. How this shift from saved to savior has taken over our screens. Because while it may seem like a modern feminist invention, born somewhere between Tumblr quotes and Netflix originals, the truth is that warrior princesses have existed long before cinema. From ancient legends and medieval chronicles to DreamWorks and Disney remakes, the princess who saves herself isn't a new trope. It's a forgotten one, merrily rediscovered. Hi everyone, my name is Alona Shilova and you're watching Femme Fatale's Heels channel, where we talk about women, film and women in film. So, quick note before we start, YouTube blocked this video for copyright reasons. You can see a screen where almost every clip that I used was copyrighted, and so I had to re-edit it. You will see this in the video, and this isn't the original version, so if you want to support my work, you can do it on Patreon. I upload their videos in original editing, and it's really important to me since recently I've lost my job because of this whole YouTube thing. I will talk more about it in a separate video, so please, if you like our content, our channel, please support it. It will actually mean a lot. Thank you. Around the same time when I fell in love with this quote, some of the most popular depictions of princesses in media, the Disney ones, also started to undergo reinterpretation. It was the moment when people began pointing out that Beauty and the Beast might include Stockholm Syndrome, that Ariel gave up her voice for a man she didn't even know, and that Cinderella is a passive heroine because she simply endures her stepsister's abuse. I also vividly remember artworks by an author, Amanda Alan-Niday, who reimagined these questions through clever, striking slogans. Without exaggeration, I think it was a groundbreaking moment to be online. When, as a little girl, you had grown up with these characters, but as a young woman, you were beginning to realize that there might be something wrong hidden between those fairy tale lines. There's also a very interesting book that I couldn't quite fit into the next segments, but I still want to mention it. It's called Cinderella Ate My Daughter by Peggy Orenstein, and in it the author brilliantly explores just how powerful and calculated Disney's influence is when it comes to shaping princesses' imagery. For example, even though Austen never read some of those classic fairy tales to her daughter or showed her Disney movies, the girl still somehow knew all the princesses' names, colors, dresses, and was already influenced by them. That's how pervasive the brand is. The book came out more than 10 years ago, so I'm sure that all the numbers and budgets Austen cites about Disney's investment into the princesses brand and marketing are much higher now. But she still paints a very clear picture. Our modern idea of princess doesn't actually come from ancient folklore. It comes from corporations like Disney and Barbie. What's even more interesting is that in recent years, Disney, while remaking their classic films, has begun trying to give their princesses more agency. From Belle suddenly inventing a washing machine to Jasmine getting her own solo song about freedom and leadership. But Disney also gets a lot of criticism for this, mainly because it often feels like they're chasing those 2016-era girl boss trends instead of actually developing their characters in meaningful ways. As a result, modern Disney animations have almost completely erased romance, because there is this strange assumption that love automatically equals weakness or dependence on a man. It's actually an interesting topic how Disney tried to rehabilitate their heroines and why it didn't quite work. And also it's interesting in comparison that like in 2016 people were accusing Cinderella of being passive, when now we're more talking about that no, she was under abuse, so it's basically victim blaming. So again, a very interesting topic for a discussion, and I think it deserves its own video, so let me know in the comments if you want to see that. But that still doesn't change the fact that after the Me Too movement, when more and more stories start to reimagine classic princess archetypes, audiences treated it as something brand new and revolutionary. And sure, seeing girls in tiaras suddenly positioned as symbols of resistance did feel refreshing. But in reality, it wasn't as unnatural or unprecedented as it may have seemed. So let's travel back in time a little. In the book Princesses Behaving Badly, Real Stories from History Without the Fairy Tale Endings, author Linda Rodriguez-McRobbie debunks the myth that through history a princess's role was limited to that of a passive damsel in distress. I highly recommend this book. It's engaging and filled with a wide range of examples of women from different countries and cultures who each in their own way broke the status quo. So no, I won't go over all of them in this video. I will just share 3 stories, but trust me, there are many more in the book. One of the first examples in the book is Pingyang, the princess who led an army. You don't take down a corrupt emperor all on your own. As a general's daughter, Pingyang knew this well. So when her father and her brother were struggling to combat the emperor's army, she didn't wait around to become war booty. She raised and commanded her own army of more than 70,000. With her help, her father was able to take the imperial throne and start a dynasty regarded as a golden age in imperial China. And did we mention she did all that before the age of 20? Pingyang lived during the early years of the Tang dynasty in China, around 623 AD. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. In Ukraine we use other letters. Unlike the typical image of a princess being used as a diplomatic pawn or married off for political gains, she wasn't content with playing a ceremonial role. When civil war broke out, she didn't hide behind palace walls. She became a part of the fight. While most royal women in historical narratives are portrayed as burgeoning chips or rewards for male heroes, Pingyang became one of the heroes herself. She recruited allies, organized resources, and built her own militia from scratch. She started recruiting soldiers from among the people she just saved from starvation, enlisting the fittest and ablest to join her so-called Army of the Lady, writes Rodriguez-McRobbie. This wasn't just a symbolic rebellion. Her leadership directly contributed to the overthrow of an emperor and the founding of the Tang dynasty, a dynasty that is still remembered as one of the golden ages of imperial China. Another powerful example is Lakshmi, the princess who led a rebellion with her son strapped to her back. Rani Lakshmi of Chanxi died in the heat of battle with the reins of her horse in her teeth and a sword in each hand. Or maybe she was turning to cut down the soldier who just shot her in the back. Or maybe she was only wounded and survived long enough to distribute her jewelry to her men and have them build her funeral pyre. Accounts vary. However death came, Lakshmi did die, and in death became a legend, a symbol of India's struggle against colonial oppression. Lakshmi was born in 1834 in Jhansi, north-central India. Again, I apologize if I accidentally mispronounced something. Please let me know in the comments. During a time when much of the region was falling under British colonial rule, widowed at a young age, she was expected to surrender her kingdom to the British, but instead she declared resistance. When British first attacked, she personally led her troops into battle, reportedly fighting with her small son tied to her back, refusing to abandon either motherhood or warfare. And I would love to finish this historical part with my personal favorite, another Ukrainian girlie, who when I saw mentioned in this book I literally jumped. the Saint Olga of Kiev, the princess who slaughtered her way to sainthood. Olga lived in 10th century Kievan Rus, and she is one of the most well-known female rulers in Ukrainian history. When her husband, Prince Igor, was murdered by a rival tribe, she didn't mourn quietly. She orchestrated one of the most calculated revenge campaigns recorded in medieval chronicles. Depending on the source, her revenge included burning enemy ambassadors alive, burning entire delegations inside bathhouses, and later setting a whole city on fire using pigeons with burning sulfur tied to their legs. So basically, many people calling her our Daenerys Targaryen. It sounds brutal, and it was, but through sheer strategy and ruthlessness, Olga crushed the rebellion, secured her rule as regent, and stabilized the state. Years later, she converted to Christianity and used diplomacy instead of warfare, which led her to being canonized as the first Christian saint of Kievan Rus. Olga is still a nature symbol here in Ukraine. We have monuments of her, and also, fun fact, there's even a modern organization called the Sisterhood of Saint Olga. Ironically, this group promotes so-called traditional family values and the idea of a woman's role as a gentle guardian of the home, which I always find kind of hilarious, because if you actually look at Olga's story, she was many things, but submissive homemaker was definitely not one of them. But I also want to point out that unfortunately I didn't think Linda Rodriguez-Macrobi really does justice to Olga's story in her book, because her chapter on Olga literally opens with quote, "Princess Olga of Kiev was married to a greedy man. Greedy, and it appears none too bright. His name was Igor, and he was the unpopular ruler of Kievan Rus, the proto-Russian 20th century kingdom that took its name from the capital city of Kiev." Honestly, there are already so many things wrong with this sentence that it's hard to know where to start. First of all, calling Prince Igor none too bright is historically inaccurate. Yes, I think partly you can call him greedy, but he also collected tribute that was standard price for rulers of that era, and he wasn't some foolish tyrant. He led military campaigns, expanded trade routes, and maintained political control over a diverse federation of tribes, which takes a little more than not being too bright. Second, referring to Kievan Rus as a proto-Russia kingdom is not just historically misleading, it's politically harmful. Kievan Rus is a shared part of early East Slavic history, but it was not early Russia. It was centered in Kiev, which is in present-day Ukraine, and modern Ukraine rightfully sees it as a part of our state heritage. Calling it proto-Russian erases Ukrainian history and plays straight into modern imperial narratives. And third, it's Kiev, not Kiev. Kiev is the outdated Russian transliteration. Kiev is the correct Ukrainian one, and using it especially today in the context of an ongoing war from Russia against Ukraine is not just a spelling preference, it's a matter of respecting identity. So please, Kiev, not Kiev. So yes, even though I do think this book does a great job collecting stories from all over the world, I'm sure that if you're actually from one of the countries mentioned, you'd probably notice at least a few historical inaccuracies, which is why I think it's important to stay mindful when we write or consume content about other cultures. Good intentions don't automatically equal accuracy, and sometimes a single sentence can trigger the very real righteous fury of Olga inside me. Speaking of which, one of my biggest dreams is to make a feature film about Olga and her revenge. I think it could be an absolutely glorious, intense piece of cinema with female rage in center. By the way, we have a separate video on this topic, so please watch it after. And for now, all I can do is pray that no one else will get this idea in the nearest years. So what about the first examples of warrior princesses in media, especially on screen? Here, the crown clearly goes to the TV series Xena Warrior Princess. Also, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and leave a comment. Recently, our views dropped a lot because of YouTube policy, and I would really appreciate your support. Just a comment and subscription and a like would be more than enough. I will be very grateful. Premiering in 1995, Xena was groundbreaking for several reasons. At a time when female characters were often sidekicks or love interests, Xena took the lead as a strong, complex, and morally ambiguous hero. She wasn't just a fighter. She had a rich backstory, personal struggles, and her own code of ethics. Yes, the outfits were mostly sexualized for the male gaze, but the show also subverted traditional gender roles. Xena could fight and lead armies, things usually reserved for male heroes, while still displaying empathy, vulnerability, and humor. It offered a version of female power that was multidimensional, not confined to one archetype. In addition, the series explored themes of redemption, loyalty, and justice through the female lens, which was still rare in mainstream television at the time. Xena's portrayal of race, gender, and sexuality may seem fairly normal or even disappointing now, but were highly progressive at the time. While the show was white-dominated, there was a clear effort made to introduce a more diverse cast. One of Xena's early love interests was a black man, something hopefully no longer of note, but still relatively unusual at the time. The show also cast a black actress, Galene Gore, as Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman in the world, offering a nice change from the usual blonde, blue-eyed Helens we have seen on the film and TV for decades. Similarly, Cleopatra was played by Gina Torres. The series also set several episodes in Asia featuring Asian guest characters. Wright's Juliet Harrison in Why Xena Warrior Princess was groundbreaking. Another revolutionary aspect was the relationship between Xena and Gabrielle, her companion. While the series never explicitly labeled it, their bond was heavily interpreted as sapphic, giving viewers one of the earliest and most visible portrayals of intense emotional and potential romantic relationships between women on mainstream TV. This allowed audiences, especially women, to see deep female friendship and love that transcended traditional heterosexual frameworks, adding another layer of empowerment and representation. In our current society, women's relationship with women always come after their relationship with their men. This traditional activity is challenged in Xena Warrior Princess. Gabrielle and Xena have saved each other's lives several times, and Xena's character is developing as her friendship with Gabrielle matures into a deep, passionate friendship. Perhaps in a return to classic romantic friendships, the women refuse to leave each other for men and work on issues in their relationship. This relationship requests that the audience question their love and what it means, writes Rhonda Nelson in The Female Hero, Duality of Gender and Postmodern Feminism in Xena Warrior Princess. The combination of action, drama, and a female lead narrative made Xena Warrior Princess a cultural touchstone, inspiring a whole generation of women and reshaping the way audiences imagined female heroes on screen. I also think one of the most revolutionary takes on a princess who saves herself is Fiona in Shrek. Probably many of you already know the story. Shrek was generally created as an anti-Disney film, as a whole DreamWorks studio in general, and that really shows in many ways, including the character of Fiona. Yes, technically Shrek still rescues her from the tower, but what follows is a deconstruction of the princess as a passive and weak, presenting instead a funny and confident woman who can stand up for herself. She fights, she talks back, she makes her own choices, and she does it all with humor and style. And we also have a video on our channel about Beauty and the Beast trope, which Shrek heavily leans to, so I recommend checking that one out too. And finally, we are reaching the part of the video where I want to talk about two modern films and one TV show that have come out in recent years, each exploring the image of a princess who saves herself in a fresh contemporary context. Damsel, The Princess, and Cursed. I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't really hard to pick the films for this section since they all feature a woman with a sword on a poster. The Princess, starring Jo King, came out in 2022. And honestly, I hadn't heard much about it. The rating was pretty mediocre, but I hadn't seen any trailers or promo either, so considering the topic of this video, The Princess felt like a natural fit. And partly it is. The plot is super simple. The princess wakes up in a tower, and through quick flashbacks we find out that she was locked there against her will for refusing to marry a tyrant who's trying to take over her kingdom. The film almost instantly throws us into action. The princess starts kicking the asses of the guards who try to restrain her. In one of the very first scenes, she literally breaks her own fingers, and at that point we understand, oh, she is that bitch. When her family and servants are being marched to execution, she realizes she can't waste a single second. So within the first 5-7 minutes, we already have a setup and a clear understanding of her motivation. But what follows can hardly be called an engaging plot. For the rest of the film, the princess keeps fighting enemies one by one, like in a video game, trying to get out of the tower and save her family. And that's literally the entire plot of the next hour and a half. Now I get it, it's an action film, a full-on beaten up, and even if the premise isn't groundbreaking, there is still so much you can do with it. Some fight scenes are fun, but most of them are just boring or mediocre at best. Don't get me wrong, if this film came out in the 90s, it would slap. But with modern franchises like John Wick, it's simply not enough anymore. What's frustrated me the most while watching it is that I couldn't understand who is this film even for. At first I thought, okay, the action is kind of bloody and brutal but not too graphic, so maybe it's aimed at teenagers. The Hunger Games, after all, was rated PG-13. But when I found out that the princess is rated R, I was just confused. Because for an adult audience it lacks both spectacle and depth. For example, there's a running joke through the movie where a fat guard is shown slowly running down the tower the entire time and only reaches the bottom at the end, because haha, he's fat. Like, who is this joke for? An R-rated audience? Through the film, authors try to give the princess some backstory through flashbacks. She's a little girl who doesn't want to be a proper princess. She wants to fight. Her father disapproves. Her mother is slightly more supportive. And that's it. Again, action films aren't known for deep psychological portraits. But here, the main character feels more like a caricature. Give her even half of personality of Fiona or Merida, and it would already be a different story. But here she embodies the most generic, strong female character template, and it's just not fun to watch. Instead, we get cheesy lines like,
"Someone needs to teach you your place."
I've heard that before.
Which in my opinion is such a waste of potential. The film tries to introduce an interesting storyline with Lin, the princess's mentor who trained her to fight, but quickly falls into the trope of the exotic Asian woman who exists only to support and elevate the white protagonist. At some point, I even hoped for a sapphic subplot between them that would have been an unexpected and cool in my opinion. I mean, who cares if Lin is older? We constantly see that dynamic in movies when it's a man. By the way, we have a whole video about the rise of cougar and MILF cinema, so go watch it please, support our channel. But no matter how badass Lin is, she clearly treated as a plot device, not a character. Speaking of plot devices, let's talk about the main antagonist, Julius. He is played by Dominic Cooper and his character gives off the same energy as in My Lady Jane, but with less of everything. He's evil, that's it. I assume Cooper tried to add some flavor and humor to him, but since the script didn't even try, it wasn't enough. And yes, with Cooper's performance in My Lady Jane, I couldn't help wondering how much better the movie would have been if it leaned into a full-on satire. Like, imagine if all the jokes were sharp commentary on the girl bossification of modern princess narratives. If we had a queer romance, a fully unhinged villain, and way more gore, it could have been a clever meta take on how women were portrayed on screen and how now writers try to empower them without actually understanding why, beyond the trends. Maybe this story could have worked better as a video game, I don't know. But one thing's for sure, it definitely deserved a less boring, anticlimactic ending. In 2024, another take on the Princess Saves Herself story came out, Damsel, starring Millie Bobby Brown. I wasn't expecting much, but honestly, it was a pleasant surprise. The film starts with Elodie being chosen as the new bride for a prince. She leaves her small, poor village with her younger sister and travels to the palace where a better life is promised. It's actually Elodie's father who is most eager about this marriage. He doesn't care about her feelings at all. We also meet Queen Isabel, played by the icon Robin Wright, who appears to be supportive but also kind of sneaky. In my opinion, this introduction takes way too long, especially considering that the trailers and posters already spoiled that Millie's character will end up fighting a dragon and becoming a princess who saves herself. But the film follows a strict 3-act structure. 30 minutes of setup, an hour of main plot, 30 minutes of finale. I personally think it would have worked better if we got to the dragon part sooner, since that's literally why we are here. But anyway, instead of becoming a newlywed, Elodie is sacrificed to the dragon's cave, and that's where the survival fairy tale actually begins. And I will say this, Millie Bobby Brown gives it her all. She acts the way people act in Oscar-nominated survival dramas, and her performance genuinely elevates the whole thing. Through the story, the heroine has to hide from the dragon, find a way out of the cave, and also save her younger sister, who remains in the hands of the royal family. By the way, I find it interesting that both the princess and Damsel feature heroines who have younger sisters, girls who are meant to follow their path and whom they must protect. In both cases, the sisters are clearly more of a narrative device than fully developed characters, but still it creates a strong metaphor about women of one generation fighting not only for themselves but for those who come after them. My favorite scene in Damsel is the moment in the cave, where Elodie finds the carved names of all the girls who were sacrificed before her. I remembered that scene even a year later before rewatching. I think it's the emotional core of the entire movie, the heart of the film. It's delicate, powerful, almost perfect. In the finale, Elodie of course fights the dragon, but we also get a twist where it turns out that the real evil isn't the mythical creature, it's the wealthy royal family, which is a nice touch, especially in today's world. And yes, I'm a simple girl. I love that the dragon was a mother avenging her children. It works perfectly within the story, no notes. Basically, my only real criticism is the pacing at the beginning, and the fact that Robin Wright's talents were completely wasted. She didn't get any meaningful backstory, she is more of a one-dimensional villain, and I really believe there was a potential to explore that dynamic of one woman sacrificing other women for her own comfortable life. I also forgot to mention in the script of the video that Angela Bassett is also present in the film, another queen icon. And yeah, the film does her a little bit more justice than to Robin Wright, but her role is still very limited. She plays the role of a mother figure and has a separate story with Millie's character. But still, while watching the film, I kept thinking, like, you have Angela Bassett in your film and this is the best you can do with her. So another iconic legend was lost in a script here. But overall, I like Damsel. The cave scene, absolute cinema. The last example I want to mention is the 2020 Netflix series Cursed, based on the illustrated novel by Tom Wheeler and Frank Miller. It's a reimagining of Arthurian legends, told from the perspective of Nimue, the future Lady of the Lake. Instead of being a mystical side character who simply hands the sword to King Arthur, here she is the chosen one. The sword literally picks her, turning her from an outcast fae girl into a warrior and a leader of rebellion. So even though she is not a princess in the traditional royal sense, I still think Curse fits into the narrative of a woman who refuses to be a passive symbol and instead claims power for herself. Originally, I wanted this segment about the films and shows to escalate. Like, the princess had its flaws, Damsel handled its concept quite well, and the curse would be this grand epic culmination. But actually, the opposite happened. For me, Curse turned out to be the weakest one of the list. And I'm really sorry, I didn't want to be an ass, but I'm just so frustrated that such a brilliant concept of subverting an old tale ended up flopping. In my opinion, the main issue lies in the writing. Many reviewers described Curse as Netflix's attempt at making their own version of Game of Thrones, and honestly, you can feel that. The show introduces way too many characters and plot lines, not only reworking the usual Arthurian figures, but also throwing the Fey race, religious, inquisitors, and even Vikings, which, let's be honest, felt like the most random addition. Because the writers tried to cram everything into one 10-episode season, the entire story feels chaotic. As for Nimue herself, she technically has a clear quest: deliver the sword to Merlin and uncover the truth about her powers and why the sword chose her. But since so many characters and subplots constantly interrupt the narrative, her journey ends up feeling surprisingly simple. One of the show's biggest weaknesses is the amount of exposition. Characters constantly explaining things out loud, even in moments where the audience could clearly understand the emotions or stakes without being spoon-fed. It kills the sense of mystery and trust between storyteller and viewer. As a result, the series never got a conclusion. In the finale of Season 1, Nimue falls wounded into the water, clearly teasing her transformation into the Lady of the Lake, presumably setting her up as a Night Maker in Season 2. But now we will never know, which is a shame because I would love to see this reinterpretation done with more restraint. Something closer, for example, to the 2018 film Ophelia. At the end of the day, the idea of princess waiting to be saved was never the full story. It was just the loudest one. Beneath it, across centuries and cultures, there have always been women who did not wait. Women who ruled, who plotted, who fought, who chose themselves. Sometimes with diplomacy, sometimes with fire. So when modern media acts like giving a woman a sword is some radical innovation, it's really more of a reminder, a return, a correction. Because the fairy tales got it wrong. The girl in the tower was never powerless. She was just biding her time. And now that she is rewriting the story, she is not asking nicely. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a comment, subscribe. Recently our views dropped and it's really important for me right now to see your support, for you to be engaged with the content. I will be enormously grateful for it. Also, you can always write in the comments which topic you would like me to cover next. I'm always reading them and collecting the ideas because I want to create content that is interesting for you. So again, thank you for watching and see you in the next videos. Bye bye!